My friends, let's begin with a simple question, one that has shaped lives for centuries. Have you ever wondered why some people seem to change their lives forever, while others barely change for a week? Why some rise higher every year, while others repeat the same January promises for the 10th time? I used to think it was talent. I used to think it was luck. But here's what I discovered after many years of studying success. Your life does not change by chance. It changes by habit. Not the habits you practice once in a while, but the habits you practice every single day. Now, there's something fascinating about human nature. Most people are not short on ambition, they're short on consistency. They dream big in the morning and drift by the afternoon. They make strong declarations on Sunday and lose steam by Wednesday. But here's the truth I want you to hold on to. Your future is not built in a day, it's built by what you do every day. Your future is not the product of occasional inspiration. It's the result of deliberate repetition. Some people rise. Some people repeat. Some people transform. And others merely try. The difference, my friends, is not intelligence, not education, not opportunity. The difference is habits. What you practice, you become. And what you neglect, you slowly lose. You see, the world has changed. Technology has changed. The pace of life has changed. But the principles of success haven't changed at all. They are ancient, they are permanent, and they are waiting for you to master them. And the greatest of these principles is this. Your habits are the quiet builders of your destiny. Not your intentions, not your hopes, but the daily disciplines you honor when no one is watching. So tonight, we're not just going to talk about habits. We're going to talk about the habits that last forever. The habits that outlive motivation. The habits that survive bad days. The habits that transform identity. Because if you can build the right habits not for a week, not for a season, but for a lifetime, you won't just change what you do. You will change who you are. And that, my friends, is the beginning of a truly extraordinary life. My friends, if there is one principle that decides whether a life rises or falls, it's this one, consistency. Not intensity, not motivation, not talent, consistency. Because in the end, what you do occasionally may entertain you, but what you do consistently is what shapes you. It shapes your body, it shapes your mind, it shapes your character, and eventually it shapes your destiny. Let me tell you something I learned early on. Success is nothing more than a few simple disciplines practiced every day. Just a few. Not 30, not 50, a handful, but every day. And failure, I must warn you, is just as simple. It comes from a few small errors in judgment, repeated every day. That's the danger. Failure is quiet. It whispers. It drifts. It never shows up with sirens. It sneaks in through neglect. One small decision at a time. Now think about this. One glass of water won't hydrate you, but one glass of soda every day will harm you. One day of reading won't make you wise, but one day of skipping your learning will not make you foolish either. And that's the tricky part of life. Your daily choices rarely hurt you today, but they always hurt you eventually. The consequences come later, and when they do, they compound. That's why consistency is the true miracle of personal development. It turns the small into the mighty. It turns the invisible into the undeniable. Just like a tiny seed becoming a forest, or a quiet drop of water carving a canyon over years, consistency is slow until it's sudden. You won't see the results at first. You may not feel different after one day of discipline. But stay with it, stay faithful, stay steady, and suddenly the world will look at your life and say, my goodness, how did you do it? And you'll smile because you know the truth. You didn't do anything extraordinary, you just did the ordinary consistently. But let me also give you a warning, a gentle one. Inconsistency is the silent thief. A missed day becomes a missed week. A missed week becomes a lost month. And a lost month becomes a quiet regret that follows you for years. You must guard your consistency like treasure. You must treat it as sacred, because once you lose your daily rhythm, You lose more than progress, you lose belief. So here's the heart of the law. What you do, you become. If you read every day, you become a reader. If you exercise every day, you become healthy. If you plan every day, you become intentional. And if you procrastinate every day, you become someone who lives below their potential. Identity is nothing but consistent behavior. Change your consistency and you change your identity. My friends, motivation is a spark, but consistency is the fire. And if you want a life that shines bright, a life of success, fulfillment, and progress, you must feed that fire every single day. My friends, now we come to a turning point in this journey, a moment that every successful life hinges upon. And that moment is a decision. Not a wish, not a hope, not a temporary burst of enthusiasm, but a real decision, the kind that divides your life into before and after. I used to believe that people change slowly, over long periods of time, but I discovered that's not true. People change in an instant, in the moment they finally decide. I will not live like this anymore. I will not break my promises anymore. I will not waste my potential another year. That moment, my friends, is the beginning of transformation. Decision is the birthplace of discipline. Let me draw a clear line for you, the kind Jim Rohn loved to draw. There is a difference between a wish, which asks, a want, which hopes, and a decision, which acts. A wish says, it would be nice. A want says, I hope someday, but a decision says, no matter what. You see, most people don't fail because they lack ability. They fail because they never make a firm decision. Their lives operate on maybe, on someday, on we'll see. And a we'll see life never produces a here are the results life. A decision is powerful because it does something extraordinary. It reorganizes your identity. You're no longer someone who tries. You become someone who moves. You're no longer someone who wants to. You become someone who does. And your habits, those daily disciplines, start to line up behind this new identity. Now let me give you a truth you may not have heard before. Behind every lasting habit is a decisive moment. The moment you decide to show up for yourself. The moment you decide the old way is over. The moment you decide that your future deserves more than your excuses. Most people never build strong habits because they never start with a strong decision. They begin casually. They begin when it's convenient. But habits that last forever can't be born that way. They must be born from clarity, conviction, and commitment. Your life changes when you reach that point, the point where you say, this is the day, this is the hour, and this is the version of me that will not turn back. When you make that kind of decision, the mind gets sharp, the heart gets steady, and the body gets moving. You stop negotiating with your weaknesses and start collaborating with your strengths. My friends, a decision is like drawing a line in the sand. The old self stays behind. The new self steps forward. And once you step forward with a real decision, your habits will begin to shift. Your discipline will begin to grow. And your identity will begin to transform. Because here's the truth. You don't start with the habit. You start with the decision that makes the habit possible. My friends, now that we've spoken about decision, that powerful turning point, let's talk about what comes next. Because once you decide, the next question is always, where do I begin? And here's where most people get it wrong. They begin big, too big. They start with grand plans, long lists, heavy commitments. And for a day or two it feels wonderful until the weight collapses on them. If you want habits that last forever, you must understand the principle I'm about to give you. It's simple, but it is profound. I call it the seed habit principle. And it goes like this. Don't start with the forest. Start with the first tree. Don't start with the mountain. Start with the first step. Don't start with the masterpiece. Start with a single brushstroke. Most people fail because they try to overhaul their entire life in one weekend. They buy the new planner, new equipment, new routines, everything big, everything dramatic. But big beginnings don't build lasting habits. Small beginnings do. Quiet beginnings do. Seed-sized beginnings do. Let me tell you why. A seed is tiny, almost insignificant. But inside that small seed is the blueprint for a forest. The roots, the trunk, the branches, all of it is hidden inside that tiny beginning, and your habits work the same way. One small action, repeated daily, carries the potential to transform your entire identity. You don't need to read for 2 hours. Start with 10 minutes. You don't need to change your entire diet. Start with one healthy choice. You don't need to run 5 miles. Start with 5 minutes. Start small, so small that you can't talk yourself out of it. Here's a Jim Rohn insight. Discipline weighs ounces. Regret weighs tons. A small discipline is light, easy to carry. You can do it even on a tired day. A regret, that heavy feeling of I should have, that's what crushes the spirit. So choose the ounce today instead of the ton tomorrow. A seed habit works because it bypasses fear, avoids overwhelm, and escapes procrastination. It's easy to begin, easy to repeat, easy to grow. And once it grows, something remarkable happens. The habit stops asking for permission and starts acting like identity. That's when you know the seed has taken root. So ask yourself, what is the smallest version of the habit I want? If you want to be stronger, start with 5 push-ups. If you want to be wiser, read 1 page. If you want to be more disciplined, keep 1 promise. My friends, the goal is not to impress the world with a giant start. The goal is to impress yourself with a consistent start. Because if you can plant the seed, just the seed, the tree will take care of itself. Lasting change doesn't begin with intensity. It begins with simplicity. It begins with humility. It begins with a seed. My friends, let me share with you one of the most powerful truths you'll ever learn about habits. A truth so profound that once you grasp it, your entire approach to discipline will change forever. And here it is. You cannot build a productive life on broken promises to yourself. We all keep promises to others. We show up when someone is counting on us. We deliver when someone is watching. We honor our commitments because we fear letting people down. But oddly enough, the easiest person to disappoint is ourselves. We say, I'll wake up early. Then we don't. We say, I'll start reading tonight. Then we postpone it. We say, I'll start tomorrow. And tomorrow becomes next month. But here's what I want you to understand. Every time you break a promise to yourself, your confidence suffers a quiet, invisible injury. It doesn't scream, it doesn't hurt immediately, but slowly, gently, it erodes the most important thing you own, your self-respect. Now, let me give you the contrasting Jim Rohn truth. Every time you keep a promise to yourself, no matter how small your confidence grows, and confidence, my friends, is the foundation of discipline. Discipline is not just about willpower, it's built on self-trust. When you honor your own word, you begin to believe that you are capable. You begin to believe that you're reliable. And once you believe you're reliable, your habits can finally take root. Think of it this way. Each kept promise is a brick. Each broken promise is a crack. And your identity, the person you believe you are, is the house built from those bricks or weakened by those cracks. You see, the reason many people lack discipline is not because they're weak. It's because, deep down, they don't trust themselves. And why don't they trust themselves? Because they've broken too many quiet promises. Not the ones spoken loudly to others, but the ones whispered to themselves in the dark. So how do we rebuild that trust? You start small. You keep 1 promise today. Wake up when you said you would. Drink the water you said you'd drink. Read the page you told yourself you'd read. Start with something that proves one thing to your spirit. I can count on myself. The moment you begin keeping promises to yourself, something extraordinary happens. You walk differently. You think differently. You expect more from yourself and you deliver more because you've created alignment between your word and your action, your intention and your execution. And remember this Jim Rohn philosophy. External discipline is simply internal commitment made visible. You don't build discipline by accident. You build it by integrity, the integrity of your own word. Once you decide that your promises matter, not just to others but to you, your habits will no longer feel like a struggle. They'll feel like an expression of who you are becoming. My friends, when you gain self-respect, consistency becomes natural. And when consistency becomes natural, your habits become unstoppable. And that truly is the beginning of personal power. My friends, now let me share with you a truth that many people overlook, a truth that has shaped more destinies than motivation ever has. And that truth is this: your environment is silently sculpting your habits every single day. Whether you realize it or not, your surroundings are training you, training your thoughts, your actions, your expectations, and even your standards. See, most people try to change their life by changing their willpower, but willpower is a short-term visitor. It shows up strong in the morning and disappears by lunch. You don't rise to willpower, you fall to environment. And that's why your environment must work for you, not against you. Jim Rohn used to say, you become the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with. And that's not philosophy, that's mathematics. You absorb the attitudes, the effort, the expectations of the people around you. If you spend time with disciplined people, discipline feels natural. If you spend time with lazy people, laziness becomes acceptable. If you surround yourself with dreamers and doers, you'll rise. If you surround yourself with complainers and doubters, you'll sink. But let me expand this idea beyond people, because today, your environment is not just physical. It's digital. It's mental. It's emotional. Your room is an environment. Your phone is an environment. Your daily routines are environments. Your social media feed is an environment. And every environment is whispering instructions to your habits. A cluttered room encourages a cluttered mind. A distracting phone creates a distracted life. A chaotic routine produces chaotic results. And a negative digital feed leads to negative thinking. But here's the good news. You can design your environment like an architect designs a building. And when you design it well, success becomes easier, not because you became stronger, but because the environment became smarter. Here are the principles. Make good habits obvious. Put the book on your pillow. Lay out your clothes the night before. Keep healthy food within arm's reach. Make bad habits invisible. Hide the distractions. Remove the triggers. Don't tempt your weaker moments. Make the path of discipline the path of least resistance, not the other way around. You see, when your environment supports your habits, you don't have to fight yourself every day. You don't have to battle temptation every hour. The environment carries part of the load. And that, my friends, is what creates sustainability. Jim Rohn taught us, if you don't design your own life plan, chances are you'll fall into someone else's. And guess what they have planned for you? Not much. The same goes for your environment. If you don't control it, it will control you. If you don't shape it, it will shape you. If you don't design it for success, it will drift toward convenience, and convenience rarely builds character. So take a moment tonight, not tomorrow, tonight, and ask yourself, does my environment reflect my goals or my excuses? If it reflects excuses, change it. If it reflects distraction, clear it. If it reflects your old self, upgrade it. Because when your environment is aligned with your purpose, your habits grow naturally, like plants in rich soil. And when your habits grow naturally, your progress multiplies. And when your progress multiplies, your life begins to shift quietly, consistently, powerfully. My friends, design the world around you with intention. Let your environment become your silent partner in success. Because if you get this piece right, the rest becomes easier, almost inevitable. My friends, now we arrive at one of the most powerful forces in all of personal development, a force that separates those who try from those who transform. And that force is momentum. Once you understand momentum, discipline becomes easier, progress becomes smoother, and success becomes almost automatic. Let me explain it this way. In the beginning, habits feel heavy. They require effort, intention, attention. Starting anything new, a routine, a discipline, a positive change, feels like pushing a stalled train. The first push is the hardest. The second push is still tough. But if you stay with it, if you keep pushing through those early moments of resistance, something remarkable begins to happen. The train starts to move, slowly at first, then faster, then smoother. Here's the Jim Rohn truth. Once momentum takes over, discipline becomes identity. In the beginning, you force the habit, but with momentum, the habit begins to pull you. In the beginning, you decide to act, but with momentum, action becomes automatic. And when action becomes automatic, my friends, you have entered the zone of transformation. Most people never reach momentum because they quit in the friction phase, the early days, when habits feel unnatural and results feel invisible. They stop right before the train starts moving. They give up right before the magic begins. But if you can push just a little longer, just a little further, you'll discover that momentum is the greatest multiplier of all. Now let's talk about identity. Because momentum and identity are twins. They grow together, they strengthen each other, and they transform each other. You see, your identity is not who you wish to be. It's not who you pretend to be. Your identity is who you consistently prove yourself to be. If you read every day, you become a reader. If you exercise every day, you become an athlete. If you plan every day, you become intentional. If you act every day, you become disciplined. Identity is built by repeated behavior. And that's why momentum is so powerful. It reinforces who you believe you are. Let me give you an analogy in the style of Jim Rohn. A train moving at high speed can crash through walls, but a train standing still can be stopped by a single rock on the track. Momentum turns obstacles into inconveniences. Stagnation turns inconveniences into obstacles. When you have momentum, waking up early becomes easy. When you have momentum, staying focused becomes natural. When you have momentum, keeping promises becomes part of your character. You become, quite simply, someone who doesn't quit. And this is the real goal of habits. Not to build routines, not to check boxes, but to build a new self, a self that acts consistently, a self that follows through, a self that no longer negotiates with weakness, excuses, or old patterns. My friends, when your identity shifts, truly shifts, the old battles disappear. You no longer fight to be disciplined. You simply are disciplined. You no longer wrestle with procrastination. It no longer fits who you are. You no longer rely on motivation. You rely on momentum. That is when life begins to feel aligned. That is when progress feels natural. That is when you step into your future with confidence, not as a visitor, but as the rightful owner. And the moment you become the person who doesn't quit, the world opens in ways you never imagined. My friends, now that we've talked about momentum and identity, let's bring all these principles down to earth to the ground level where life is actually lived. Because principles are powerful, philosophy is beautiful, but your daily routine is where your future is truly formed. And if you don't design your days with intention, your days will design you with accident. What I want to give you now is what I call the daily program, a simple, repeatable blueprint that creates structure, strength, and clarity. You see, success doesn't come from doing big things occasionally. It comes from doing the right things regularly. And a daily program ensures that your habits, your focus, and your energy are always aligned. Let's walk through it together. 1. Start before the day starts the nightly plan. Jim Rohn taught us, don't start your day until you've finished it on paper. And what did he mean? He meant that you should never wake up wondering what today is about. That's how chaos begins. That's how stress grows. That's how people lose their mornings, their momentum, and their peace. So the night before, not in the morning when the world is already shouting at you, take 10 quiet minutes to plan your next day. Ask, what matters most tomorrow? What deserves my time? What must be done no matter what? When you do this, you wake up with direction instead of confusion, purpose instead of panic. 2. The first discipline, do the hardest thing first. Your willpower is strongest in the morning. Your clarity is sharpest. Your resolve is highest. So use that power wisely. Don't waste it on small tasks or easy chores. Do the hard thing, the thing you've been avoiding, the thing that makes the biggest difference. Jim Rohn called it eating the frog. If you have to eat a frog, don't look at it all day. Eat it first thing in the morning. When you conquer your biggest battle early, you carry that victory into everything else. You walk lighter, think clearer, and act stronger. 3. Create sacred hours, blocks of deep, unbroken focus. The modern world is noisy. Notifications, messages, demands, all fighting for your mind. And a distracted mind can only produce distracted results. So here's what you do. Choose 1 or 2 hours of your day and make them sacred. Turn off the noise. Close the door. Silence the world. And work deeply, fully, completely, without interruption. These sacred hours are where masterpieces are born. Businesses are built. Skills are sharpened. Lives are changed. If you want to separate yourself from the average, do what the average refuses to do. Focus deeply. 4. Review and reflect. Convert experience into wisdom. At the end of the day, take just a few minutes to reflect. Not an hour, not a seminar, just a few quiet moments. Ask yourself, what did I accomplish today? What did I learn? Where did I lose my focus? Where did I win? What can I do better tomorrow? This simple ritual transforms every day into a teacher. It turns mistakes into lessons, experiences into insights, and confusion into clarity. Jim Rohn taught, don't just live your life, study it. Reflection is the study. 5. Purpose, alignment, reconnect with your why. A day without purpose becomes a day of distraction. So take a moment each morning or each evening to reconnect with your reason. Ask, why am I building these habits? Who am I becoming? What future am I preparing myself for? When your purpose is strong, your actions become meaningful. When your actions are meaningful, they become sustainable. And when they are sustainable, my friends, they become habits that last forever. The point of the program, this daily program, is not complicated. It's not overwhelming. It doesn't require superhuman discipline. It simply requires intention. Because if your days are intentional, your habits will be consistent. And if your habits are consistent, your future becomes predictable not by chance, but by choice. Remember, habits don't just shape your day, they shape your destiny. When you master your daily program, you create a life that moves forward, not sporadically, but steadily, powerfully, purposefully. A life that aligns, a life that compounds, a life that grows, and eventually, a life that feels like it was designed, not drifted into. My friends, we've traveled a long road together in this session, from the power of consistency to the strength of decision, to the quiet miracle of seed habits, to the integrity of keeping your own word, to the environment that shapes you, to the momentum that transforms you, to the daily program that guides you. And now we arrive at the most important part of all, the beginning. Not the end, the beginning. Because everything we've talked about tonight becomes meaningless unless it leads you to one simple moment of action. A moment where you say, this is it. This is where it starts. A moment where you decide to leave behind the old patterns that held you back and step into the identity that's been waiting for you to claim it. Let me tell you something. Jim Rohn said that changed my life forever. You cannot change your destination overnight, but you can change your direction overnight. That means you don't need to have it all figured out. You don't need the perfect routine, the perfect discipline, or the perfect motivation. You just need one decision. Tonight, I turn toward the life I want. And when the direction changes, even by a single degree, your future begins to rearrange itself around that new path. Remember this. The habits you build will eventually build you. The promises you keep will eventually strengthen you. The identity you shape will eventually guide you. Every small act of discipline becomes a brick. Every quiet moment of focus becomes a foundation. Every good habit practiced daily becomes architecture. And one day, you wake up inside a life you designed not by accident, but by intention. And when that day comes, you won't celebrate the big victories nearly as much as you will celebrate the small beginnings. You'll look back and realize that the miracle wasn't the transformation, it was the decision, the consistency, the courage, the quiet persistence, the willingness to show up even when nobody applauded. My friends, the world doesn't reward occasional effort. It rewards consistent character. So tonight, I invite you to make a choice, not a dramatic one, not a loud one, just a simple, sincere, personal choice. Start. Start small. Start simply. Start with one habit, one promise, one seed. And let that seed grow into a life of meaning, momentum, and mastery. Because in the end, productivity isn't about output. Discipline isn't about pressure. Habits aren't about routine. Success isn't about luck. In the end, it's all about becoming the person you were meant to be through daily discipline and divine direction. And that journey, your journey, begins not tomorrow morning, not next Monday, not after the holiday. It begins tonight.